plus 250. Okay, enter. All right, the total is that correct? Well, looks like there's only one way that I'll be able to afford the competition. Oh, hello there. Welcome back to my channel. If you read the title of this video, you'll understand what I'm trying to do right now is to calculate how much does it cost to do a triathlon, anywhere from a sprint to an Ironman. I just finished calculating how much an Ironman would cost, and it would be, a pretty penny, and I was just trying to find alternative ways to pay for the competition. Clearly, one of those is not robbing a bank, as you can see by the title on this folder. It's for, apartment complexes and whatnot. I'll just put this away for now, though. Look up apartments later. Anyway, like I said, I was trying to figure out how much it would cost to do a triathlon. That was one thing that we noticed when I first started training for this competition. I couldn't really come across anything that said, really, how much does it cost to do a triathlon? What does the bike prices look like? Helmet, registration, all the above. I saw of recent that it looks like there's a few more videos starting to pop up that are kind of going over some of those categories, but they're only talking about some of the main things like a bike, registration, and so on. So with that in mind, I figured, while a really dry topic, it would be a good idea to try and do a more comprehensive overview on potentially what it would look like to pay for a triathlon competition from a sprint up to an Ironman competition. Now, during my research, I saw that there was, as you figured, a wide variety of prices depending on what type of bike you're looking for, the type of competition, area, etc. So it is a little bit difficult to kind of pinpoint how much it would cost for anyone in particular. However, you can make it as budget friendly or as expensive as you want, and I will do my best to try and give you at least the low and the high of this price as I'm going through this video. Now, to try and make it a little bit less boring, hopefully, once again, I got my little wizard robe guy right here, and I got a little hand holder here so that it will be easier for me to paint and make it hopefully easier for you to see as I am going through painting this little figure. Now, with this in mind, I got a little bit of a different paint set here. I'll probably still keep working on the robe, and this was Dragon Brass. Actually, go over the Dragon Bronze was his robe. Maybe I'll do this as an accent. Anyway, I actually got a Dragon Paint series line right here, and so maybe he'll be a Dragon Wizard or something like that. Now, before I get to that, the point of me wanting to do this is that I hope it helps somebody out there who is thinking about doing a triathlon to get kind of a rough idea on how much money they can expect to pay for going into this sport. It's not a cheap sport. Even for the small sprint level, it can still be costly, but you can still do your best to make it as budget friendly as possible, and I will, as I'm going through this, try and give a few tips as to where you could potentially make it a little bit more affordable as you're going through the process. Now, how I will break down these prices as I go through this is that I will do first the one-time purchases, such as bike, registration, etc. And I will start with the swim and then go to the bike. I will not include the run, and I will explain a little bit later as I continue this video. I actually included those costs more in the things that you might need to purchase monthly or on a more regular basis, such as your carbs and electrolytes. And I will explain my reasonings for that as I go into the video. As I'm going through this, I will then try and do my best to give some tips as to how I think you could potentially make this more affordable, such as for the bike section, like where I got my bike, and so on. I'll also add in the description below some videos of other people discussing on how much their triathlons cost, so that way you can get other people's perspectives on how much their cost to give you also an overall better idea on what this might look like. Again, like I said, this is not going to be the most riveting of topics. I know anytime the talk of money comes up that it can be a boring subject matter and just want to push it off to the back and not really think about it. But I feel that it's really, really important to go over the costs, especially as you start getting into it, because there are certain things such as the monthly or maybe bi-weekly things that will come up that will end up making this more expensive than you might think when you first initially think. And that's why I am breaking it up the way that I'm breaking it up, because I feel like, at least for myself, that when I first started doing this, I only really thought of the upfront costs, such as I need to buy a bike, I need to pay for registration, I need to pay for a coach, which is more of a monthly expense, but I was factoring that in. However, there's the small little things that you might not necessarily think about, or at least I didn't, that do start adding up, especially if you're trying to do a competition a year out or 2 years out. So you'll need to buy things like gels over a longer period of time, and that cost can end up stacking up as you're going towards your competition. With that in mind, let's jump into the fun world of the cost analysis of triathlon competitions. Let's get to it. I figured I'd try doing a close-up instead so that you can see me actually painting this guy instead of it being some vague blur from the distance. So I got everything that I need, got my wizard figure, my brush, my paint right here, the dragon bronze, also my cup of coffee to help keep me awake because I'm also going through this, because like I said, it's not the most exciting topic out there, but it is a necessary topic. So as I'm going through this, I did my best to try and include everything I could think of things that I have bought or needed during my time of trying to train for the competition, but it's more than likely not an all-encompassing list, because there very well is something I am forgetting that I didn't include in this list, but I did the best I could to try and include as much as possible to give a good overall view of what this cost could look like. So the things that I will first cover are items that you will purchase to help you get ready for the swim competition and use for the actual day of the competition. So some of these items that you will need are the following. Some of the items that you will need outside of a swimsuit to help you get ready for the competition for training, or also to use while in the competition, is the swim cap. A swim cap is really good to help decrease drag, and also if the water's cold, it can help maintain your body temperature as well. So you will be using this in the competition and also while you're training as well, whether you're in a pool or open water. So the price of swim caps can vary. You can get really cheap ones, anywhere from $5 up to $20 or even $30. This one cost me about maybe $20, I believe. It is a silicone cap, and it's actually been really durable and has lasted me a couple years while I've been training. I might need to get a new one here soon because I think maybe the elasticity is wearing out a little bit, but overall it has helped me really well. Thing is that if you get really cheap ones, you gotta think that potentially be a thinner material and more prone to breaking. That's where this is a lot more thicker and durable. Now the next thing to go over are goggles. Obviously this is to help make sure to keep your eyes open, whether it's in a lake or a pool or whatever, so that you can see while you're swimming. This is really important more so in open water, because you need to be able to sight where you're going to make sure that you're staying in a straight line and staying on course instead of veering off and potentially running into your fellow partner, or what happened to me in my first triathlon. I ended up doing backstroke a little bit for a moment so I can breathe, but I wasn't sighting and I ended up accidentally going backwards. So it's really important that you're able to see while you're in the competition for safety reasons, and also to make sure that you don't end up swimming more than you need to. So goggles, again, can vary in prices anywhere from $8 up to $30 for a little bit better ones. I think these ones cost me about $15, and they have some tint in them. So tint is really important to have in open water, especially if it's a sunny day, so that you're able to see and you're not getting glare or blinded by in the sun. Now, the thing is that there is a brand of goggles that is relatively expensive if you want to really go all out that you can buy. And of what I could see, they cost about $280. These goggles have a little bit of a screen in them that will actually show you the distance that you've gone, number of strokes that you've taken to go the distance, and just other metrics. So all really useful information to know. However, I don't know if you really want to spend $280 on a pair of goggles. But if you're wanting to go all in, get all the best things that you could possibly do to give you the best chance to be able to train and complete the competition, then those could be a really good path to go. I don't know if those goggles are allowed in the actual competition. That is something that you'll have to look up in the rule book. But either way, even if they're just for training, that alone could be really, really useful for you to have. Now, the other thing that you'll need for training, and I don't know if you've seen these before, these are hand paddles. They slip on your hand while you're swimming, and it increases the amount of water that you're pulling, so it will increase the resistance, thus improving your arm strength and endurance. The other thing is that you will notice when you're using these versus not, you do go a lot faster because you're pulling more water. Also, I've noticed for myself that because of the shape of at least these ones, that if I get on my slipstream, I'll feel them wobble a little bit. And that way it helps me notice that maybe my form is starting to give out. So they have a lot of benefits to them and are really useful to have if you are training for a triathlon or any sort of swimming competition. Now, these paddles, I believe, cost me about $20. The band's pretty thick, and this paddle's also pretty durable as well. But you can, again, get them relatively cheap, about $10, maybe even a little bit cheaper, depending on where you look. However, like everything, you can go as cheap or as expensive as you want. Now, the other thing that generally goes with these so that you can focus more on your pool is a thing that's called a pool buoy. I don't have one personally. I've been thinking about purchasing one myself. But it's a little foam brick that goes in between your legs to help keep your body afloat so you don't need to worry about kicking, so that you can focus more on your stroke and making sure that it is as efficient as possible. So for a pool buoy, one of the reasons why I don't have one is because typically, at least at the gym that I go to, they have pool buoys that you can use there at the gym. However, if you want to get your own pool buoy, you're probably looking at maybe between $15 to $30 or anywhere within that ballpark, depending on the website that you look at and other factors. Now, another thing that's really useful more for open water swimming when you're training for that is these inflatable buoys. These are really useful for that if you're kind of out in the middle of the lake or a little bit further away from shore and you're getting a little bit tired, you can grab this and hold on to it, and it will help you float while you're trying to rest for a little bit, or for any other safety factors that occur while doing open water swimming. So these buoys are fluorescent colors to make you more visible to any boaters or jet skiers that are in the water so that you don't get hit by them if you're out there swimming. So these buoys, I think this one cost me maybe about $30, but again, like a lot of these things, they can probably vary in price depending on where you are looking to purchase your items. So these are just a few of the items that you will need to purchase as you're getting ready for the competition. Of course, there are your swimsuit as well, and those, depending on what you're looking for, can range anywhere from about $20 to $42. One thing to keep in mind as you're training for this, you don't want to get your normal swim trunks that you might get for your average pool day. You want to get something that's more form-fitting to your body, such as like swim joggers or something along those lines. That's because your standard swim trunks, because they're billowy, they will increase drag. And somebody told me that with your standard swim trunks, you end up burning about 10% more energy than you would with something like a swim jogger. So when you're doing long distance, that 10% will really add up. So maybe for training, it could be potentially useful because you're so used to burning that extra energy that when you finally get to the competition and you're wearing something that's more form-fitting, more streamlined, you have that extra boost of endurance. But at the same time, it's probably better to get used to having something that's a little bit more form-fitting so that you're used to that overall feel for when you get to the actual competition. Again, that's that's up to you to decide on how you want to go about it. Just a little bit of a tip that I found out as I got more into the training. Another thing that's generally required for competitions are wetsuits. It generally depends on the temperature of the body of water that you're going to be in on whether or not a wetsuit's required. So if it's above a certain temperature, they won't require it and you can still just wear it if you need to. But typically it seems like most competitions, especially the longer distance ones, people wear wetsuits. Now, some advantages of wearing a wetsuit during a competition, while it can impede your mobility, it can definitely help with your buoyancy, making it easier to stay afloat in whatever body of water that you're in. Additionally, wetsuits can help you be a little bit more streamlined and thus make it easier to glide through the water as you're swimming, thus making it easier to glide through the water. Now, the thing is that like everything, wetsuits can come in a wide variety of prices, quality, etc. There are some wetsuits that are short sleeved and short legs instead of being like a full body, which can be cheaper than a full body wetsuit. But on average, most people wear a full body wetsuit. Now, full body wetsuits, again, like I said, they can range in prices. So on your cheaper end, you could probably find one for about $60. I think the one that I found, which was a quarter sleeve and short length in the legs wetsuit, was maybe $85, I think. But you could find ones as cheap as about $60. Now, you could go on the other end and have ones that are really expensive, about $700. And I think some of these brands could be like Orca, I think is one of the more well-known brands. But again, these can be costly. So if you're on a budget, it can be more appealing to find a cheaper one. Again, though, this will have cheaper material and it might end up being more bulky instead of streamlined. And so there's disadvantages to buying one that's on the cheaper end. Now, you could find one that's used to make it cheaper, like I've said before, but again, that one comes with a little bit of drawbacks as well. It could already be damaged, have some wear and tear, so not last as long, and there could just be other issues with that as well. But at the same time, if this is just something that you're checking out and seeing if it's something that you even want to do, then it could be really beneficial just buying a used wetsuit and seeing if it's an activity that you want to investigate and devote more money to. You can also apply for maybe an Ironman competition that's a little bit later in the summer so the water's a little bit warmer, or if you don't mind traveling, finding one that might be, if you're in the US, one that's like in Florida or Arizona or somewhere that would just be warmer, so then more than likely they wouldn't really require you to wear a wetsuit. So that is one of the other things that are required generally for most competitions. But again, the price range can vary from $60 up to about $700. So it all depends on the investment that you're willing to spend. Again, the price range can range between about $60 up to $700, depending on the brand, quality, and everything else that you're looking for. So that is roughly the cost of what it looks like for what you will need for swim gear. The next thing that I will go over is for the bike portion of the competition. Before I dive into the different costs of bike shorts, shoes, etc., I'll first cut to a clip here of me explaining how much I paid for my bike and the accessories I needed for it. For the bike that I got, it was used at about $545. Thing is, it's a 20-year-old road bike. It's a DCR3 giant compact road bike. So not exactly the newest of one, and since it's an older bike, the aluminum frame is on the heavier side compared to more modern road bikes. Additionally, I had to get a newer bike seat that was more comfortable for me for longer rides that would equate to being like an Ironman competition. Additionally, I also had to get these clip-in bike pedals from Shimano, I believe is what they are. So the bike seat cost me about maybe somewhere between $200 to $300, and the bike pedals were also not cheap. I can't remember how much they were, but I think in total between the bike and the seat and the pedals, it came to about maybe $1,000, which is still on average about cheaper than current modern aluminum road bikes, which are on the cheaper end about $1,500. So depending on what your goal is and what you're hoping to achieve, this could be a good way of going for maybe short-term distances, or even for long-term if you don't really care so much about finishing with a really good time, but just want to complete it, because with the heavier frame, you will be expending more energy, so your time might not be as good since you would be going slower compared to somebody who has a carbon fiber bike or even a newer aluminum bike, especially if it's a hilly course. So there's pros and cons to going this route, but if you're just trying to get in and see if this is something that you even want to do, this is a good route to go. The trainer I got was the Wahoo Snap Kicker. This one is just a roller base, so you can just keep your bike whole, lock it in, and then it will adjust the resistance on the tire depending on whatever workout that you are doing for the day. Now, I got mine on Facebook Marketplace for $85, which is a good place to work, or maybe eBay if you're really on a budget and you want to get a trainer, because these can get really expensive. I'll talk about price a little bit further in after this, but they can be $200+. There's also another one where you remove the tire and then put it on the device where you have a chain and it will adjust accordingly. That one, it tends to be more expensive, but can be better because you're not wearing down your tire like you would with the roller. So if you have the money, it could be more worthwhile to get and invest in. But for anyone who's on a budget, generally these rollers are cheaper, and also looking online, like I said, Facebook Marketplace, eBay, maybe Craigslist would be a good way to go. Okay, welcome back. That was how much I spent for my bike. And like I said in the clip, it's a 20-year-old bike. It's got a heavier frame compared to current, more modern aluminum bikes. So that will really take a toll on my energy, especially if I'm doing a really hilly course. If it's flat, then maybe it might not be as noticeable. But again, if you're able to afford a newer bike, even if it's on the cheaper end, it probably could be for the better. Or if you could find a used bike that is of a newer model compared to mine. The thing is that when I got my bike, I didn't really know where to look for it, and the only place I really one of the places I came across was Cambridge Bicycles, I believe, where I got mine, and this was really the only road bike that they had. So I went ahead and purchased it, partly because when I did my first triathlon, I wasn't really I thought it was something that I wanted to do, but at the same time I wasn't 100% sure, so I didn't want to go drop $3,000 on a bike, do one race, and be like, never again. I mean, yes, I could sell it back, but I wouldn't get my full money's worth because it was used. So give and take for what that is. So now for the bike. Okay, so bikes can really, like everything, can really vary, but bikes especially, you can get relatively as cheap as you want or go really, really expensive. So lower end aluminum race bikes, you could probably find, if you go brand new, you could probably find for potentially $1,200 or $1,300. You might be able to find cheaper ones, but at least of the bicycle shops I went to that were local to me, seemed to be about the average price range that they quoted me for an aluminum bike. If you want to go carbon fiber, which is a lot lighter than an aluminum bike, you could probably find one on average maybe about $2,800. But I feel like some of the ones I saw, they were being quoted more around $3,200. So that is quite a bit of money and quite a bit of a difference compared to just getting an aluminum race bike. However, like I said, bikes can get really, really expensive if you want to, again, go all out and do the best that you can if you want to try and potentially place in a competition. So one of the bikes that I came across when I was getting my bike maintenanced, it was waiting for the owner to pick it up, and I was talking to the bike mechanic, and he told me how much that bike that I saw there cost. So this bike, had a custom built carbon fiber frame for that owner. It had electronic shifting, which is interesting to hear for a bike. It also had like hydraulic brakes, a bike seat that was probably more fit for that particular owner, and whatever else that it had. So that he told me that bike cost about $35,000. That is an incredibly crazy price for a bicycle. That's as much as some new cars. So again, like I said, the bike alone can really vary in price, and you can go as cheap as you want or as expensive as you want. And there's probably more expensive bikes out there compared to what that one was, but it really all depends on you. So that is the cost for just the bike. Okay, so then let's say that you just buy an off-the-rack carbon fiber bike, let's say. So now for the next part is that you need to find a bike seat that is comfortable for you. Now, you could probably get away if you're doing shorter distances like a sprint, maybe even Olympic, with just using the bike seat that maybe it comes with. That could potentially be comfortable enough for you for shorter distances. However, if you are doing a long race, such as a half Ironman or a full Ironman, Tour de France, or anything else, you need to find a bike seat that's comfortable for you for long distance riding. Now the thing is, there are bike pants that you can get that have really good padding on them, so you might be able to get away with a cheaper bike. However, with a triathlon competition, it is more often than not recommended, because especially if you're going for time, to get what's called a tri-suit, which has a little bit of padding, but not so much that it will interfere and be uncomfortable for when you do your run. And then you could also wear it underneath your wetsuit, so you don't have to worry about changing your clothes at all. So with that in mind, you probably need to really think about the bike seat that you're going to be using. Me personally, I think I went through 5 or 6 different bike seats before I found one that seemed to be comfortable enough for long rides. Now, again, this one will vary on price. You could find as cheap as you want or expensive you want, but it really also, again, depends on what seat is most comfortable for you. I tried to get away with the cheapest bike seat I could find, which I think, again, you can find like super cheap bike seats with like, maybe $20, $30, maybe like a nice gel bike. But I think for racing bikes, they're a little bit different of a design compared to a mountain bike. And so for bike seats, I think the cheapest I came across was $120, but I think the one that ended up working most for me, for being the most comfortable, was, I tried to find how much I paid for, but it had been long enough back that the bank statement didn't pull it up. But I think it was about $300. So I ended up having to get a $300 bike seat that was comfortable for me for the longer rides, which I didn't even think about. I did not think that the bike seat alone could be a good few $100. I was thinking maybe like $100 at most. So again, that was my bad, and that was just my ignorance going into this, which is why I'm creating this video. Yeah, so that was for me. So for the price range of bike seats that you could be looking at, depending on, again, what works best for you, you can find really cheap ones for about $50, but you can also go up to $400, maybe even $500 for a bike seat. Again, like I said, if you're doing shorter distances, then you probably could get away with a cheaper bike seat that's a little bit more comfortable and be fine with it. My first sprint triathlon that I did, I just used the bike seat that came with the bike when I purchased it. And it worked well enough. It was, I think my sprint was about 10 miles. I think sprints can sometimes go up to about 13 miles, but it wasn't really too long of a distance that I didn't feel at all uncomfortable while riding the bike. Maybe a little bit towards the end, partly because I hadn't ridden the bike in a while, and so I was not used to being on a bike seat for too long of a period of time, but overall it worked pretty well. However, when I started doing the longer rides, that's when I really started noticing how uncomfortable the bike seat was. So that's just for the bike seat. The next thing for the bike to look into is bike pedals and bike shoes. For long distance especially, you want to have clip-in shoes. This is to help you have the equal amount of force as you're going on the upstroke as you do on the downstroke by pedaling, so that you're more energy efficient during your bike for a long distance. Again, you can find really cheap bike shoes and bike pedals, and you can also find really expensive bike shoes and bike pedals. For myself in the beginning, I did try to go on the cheaper side. However, the cheaper side did not work so well for me. The first bike shoes I used, they were really stiff. And what happened was as I was pedaling over long periods of time, doing my longer bike rides of the 1-2+ hours, my feet would start to swell. And there was no give in the shoes for my feet to expand, and it became really, really uncomfortable and really painful for me to ride the bike. And where this became even more noticeable is when I started doing 2 bikes a week. My feet did not have enough time to really recover from the previous bike ride, and so I would barely start and my feet were already aching. So again, if you're able to go cheaper and have it be fine, then go for it. However, for me, that was just not a possibility. And again, if you're doing something like an Ironman competition where you're biking for 110 miles, you really need to find good shoes that are comfortable for you for these long distances. And that means that you will have to spend a little bit more money than you were originally intending. I think at the end for me, my pedals, I can't remember what I said in the video, but I think my pedals were somewhere over $100, and my bike shoes were probably somewhere between $200 to $300. So I probably spent between the pedals and the shoes somewhere between $300 to $400 just for the pedals and the shoes. For me though, it was worth it. It was a lot more comfortable, and I was able to do the longer rides without any problems. There were more expensive shoes, so luckily I didn't have to go for the more expensive ones, but still, it did cost me a fair amount. For the price range though, that you would be looking at for bike shoes and pedals, so bike shoes can range from $90 up to $450 and potentially more. But the most expensive ones I found was about $450. And the pedals can cost about $50 up to $400 as well, again, depending on the type that you're getting. So they can get pretty expensive as you're investigating which ones would work best for you. The last thing for the bike I believe that you'll need, that's just a one-time cost, is a bike helmet. Again, this can be anywhere from $30 up to $400. I think I went for maybe a $50 helmet, and it worked well enough. But the more expensive ones are going to be more aerodynamic so that you decrease your drag as you're going on the bike. One of the other things I believe I forgot to mention are aero bars. I will put up a picture here to show what they are, but aero bars are something that you can lean your forearms on and be down in a more tucked position instead of being up tall. This will also further make you more aerodynamic, decreasing your drag as well. compared to being upright. I'm not sure on what the price of these are right off, so I will look it up afterwards and I will put the price range here. Now, there's one last thing I will bring up that is potentially more used during training than your actual competition, and that are bike shorts. I personally didn't get any bike shorts, mainly because I was trying to make this as affordable as possible, and bike shorts can get kind of spendy depending on what you're looking at. And I did have my tri-shorts, so it did have the bit of padding, so for me anyway, it was fine. But bike shorts when you're training can be really useful because it can make those long rides a lot more comfortable, because when you're getting up there and you're training, you're going to be doing 2.5, 3, maybe 4 hour bike rides. And if you can make that as comfortable as possible during those longer rides, bike shorts can be really, really useful for sure. So bike shorts can range anywhere from $65 up to $250. And again, it all depends on comfort, what works for you, brand, and etc. as for the price range. So I believe that is everything more or less for the bike portion that you'd need. So you got your bike itself, a bike seat, bike pedals, aero bars, and bike shorts. Now, some additional things that you will need more so for training are a bike trainer. Bike trainers are really useful, especially if you live in places where you got all 4 seasons and it can get really cold or snowy during the winter to go out and ride your bike. There are various bike trainers, like I said in my little video. The one I have is the Wahoo Snap Kicker. But again, these prices can also vary depending on the ones that you get. So a bike trainer can be anywhere from maybe $100 up to $1,500. I'll put up a few pictures here so that you have a bit of an idea on what they look like. So again, they can cost anywhere from $100 up to $1,500 depending on the brand that you get. Again, like I said, I got mine on Facebook Marketplace used for $85, so you can go that route for sure to find a cheaper one. eBay, Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, or maybe at a bike shop, they might have some used ones as well. I really like this personally because I do live somewhere where it does get cold during the winter and can also snow. So I can just hook up my bike, do my training, and stay warm and dry. So that is a really useful tool to have in your arsenal as you're getting ready for your competitions. And so I believe that covers everything for the bike portion of this video. You got your bike seat, pedals, shoes, aero bars, helmet, and then for training, you got your bike shorts and your trainer. So already you can see that the price is already adding up just for the bike is where a lot of the main upfront cost comes from. So there are a couple little just additional one-time purchase stuff within a particular time window that you can get. So there are, I've mentioned it before, there are tri-suits. I'll again put up some pictures of what tri-suits look like. These are outfits that are generally more streamlined, and these are outfits that are generally more form-fitting so that you can wear it underneath your wetsuit and not need to worry about changing in between transitions, because I also have a little bit of padding for the bike. And these are really beneficial. Like if you're just doing a sprint or maybe even Olympic, a tri-suit might not be as necessary. But again, if you're doing long distance, it can really be beneficial to not have to worry about changing clothing between each transition. You just wear one outfit and you can wear it underneath your wetsuit all the way to the very end. Now, tri-suits, the one that I got, it was just shorts, and it wasn't too much, I think. I think it was maybe about $60, probably maybe even a little bit cheaper than that, but yeah, so you can find ones that aren't too bad prices. So the price range of tri-suits, so they can be like $50 up to $200, where they're more like a full onesie outfit where it's a top and bottom all as one piece, or like what I had, which are just shorts. Now the full body outfit is a little bit more useful because that way you don't have to worry about putting on a shirt or changing a shirt or anything like that. And you can just wear it all in one go from start to finish. So while it's not necessary to get a tri-suit, it can be very beneficial, especially for time saving, for you not have to worry about constantly changing outfits between the transitions. So it's something to look into and see if it's something that you want to do. One of the other things as well that is definitely not needed, and depending on who you talk to, they'll tell you one way or another, but I personally invested in a fitness watch for myself because I wanted to have, even if it's only a ballpark idea, roughly know what my heart rate was during exercises, what calories I'm burning, and there's a lot of other features for sure that come with fitness watches as well. It's also really useful that if you have a coach and they use an app called Training Peaks as well, it's really useful to have a fitness watch because you can have it synced up to the Training Peaks, and so when you're done with a run or a swim or anything like that, it will upload your metrics to the app, and that way your coach can see what your heart rate was, how long of a distance you did, how much time it took you, etc. So then they also have an idea on how to adjust your plans accordingly on top of you just telling them how it went. So it's really useful for the coach to see, okay, it took them 20 minutes to go 1.5 miles and their heart rate was sitting around this range. All right, so that means for the next workout, I should probably adjust it accordingly. So it can be very useful to have a fitness watch. And one of the things that I also got, so for myself, is that I got the, right here that you see me wearing in the video, this one is the Garmin Forerunner 955, I believe. This one I got because it does have some water resistance to it, up to 50 meters or something like that. And also it has a triathlon feature, so we'll start out with the swim and then you can switch it to the bike and then the run, all in just one feature instead of needing to switch back and forth between them. So that's one of the reasons why I got this one in particular. And it also has a solar panel, which the solar panel for me, I was thinking is a little bit useful because if you're doing something like an Ironman competition and can keep it kind of like a little bit from dying quicker, so hopefully it will last you the whole run. Because when you're using the activity, especially as a open water or a run, it also does GPS, so that will drain the battery a lot quicker. This one costed me about $600, I believe. It's a one-time purchase. There are no subscriptions or anything like that to be able to use this or the Garmin Connect app. So for me, it seemed like the best deal for what I was looking for. I've really enjoyed this watch. It does have a lot of features, and depending on the face that you could get, it can show you like your steps a day throughout the week and just various things. And then if you're wearing it, it will also show you your heart rate. So yeah, so I've really enjoyed this one in particular, but again, it was definitely more on the expensive side. You can do payment plans that they offer, and there are a lot of other activities. Now, there are, again, other watches outside of this, other brands of Garmin's that you can get that will be a little bit cheaper or even a little bit more expensive, but you also got Whoop and Apple Watches and other Fitbits and other sort of fitness things out there. So it really depends on what you're looking for. Now, things like Whoop are appealing to a lot of people. Heard a lot of really good things about the Whoop. But the thing is that for them, instead of it being a one-time purchase, it is a monthly subscription. So it could be cheaper for you to get a Whoop and have that be your fitness watch. If you're only planning on doing this once for a year, that would definitely be a lot cheaper, because I think it's like maybe $20 a month over the course of a year. That's about $240, $250 as to where, like I said, this was about $600. But if it is something that you're looking for doing long term, could over time end up costing more. So I've had this watch for over 3 years now. And so it's probably about paid itself as much as how much getting a Whoop probably would have cost me as well. So I think in the end right now, this has ended up being cheaper than going with a Whoop. But some people have both. And some people, I'm not really sure on the benefits of that. I'll see if I can find a video and post that in the description why there might be beneficial to have something like this and a Whoop. But either way, again, it's kind of up to you on whether or not you want to get a fitness watch, but it's something that could be really helpful, especially if this is something that you really want to invest a lot of time and money in. So again, you don't really need a watch, and I understand if you don't really want to worry about investing in it. If this is something that you are seriously contemplating on really getting invested in, it could really be worthwhile to look into getting a fitness watch. Now, another thing that will be a miscellaneous purchase is headphones. Now, you don't really need headphones, but it can really make things, if you're on like a longer jog, bike, or whatever, a lot more bearable if you have some music or maybe a good story to listen to. Now, one of the things that I will mention though, and I actually didn't realize this until I started looking into the rules. While for sprints and maybe even Olympic distance, headphones can be allowed, for half and full length Ironmans, wearing headphones is against the rules, which means that you have to go the whole 140 miles between the swim, bike, and run without any headphones. So that could be a little bit rough, but at the same time, compared to when you're training, might not be as bad because you'll have other people around, other things to like really just focus in on. So it might not be that bad. But anyway, but for those of you that are worried about that fact, then on not being able to have music during the competition, it might really be useful just to do not all your training, but maybe some of the training, just doing maybe part of your run or your bike without having any music or anything on. Just have your headphones on you, and then when you just can't take it anymore, you at least have your headphones on you, and then pop your headphones in. Now again, that's completely person by person basis and is up to you on if you want to go that route. But still, it's a miscellaneous cost. And again, like a lot of things on this list, there can be varying prices. Headphones anywhere from $15 up to $300-400 plus dollars for Bluetooth and other headphones. For me, I found like a pair of $20 headphones that seem to work pretty well. The quality is not too bad, and they're small enough and fit well enough that they won't fall off as I'm jogging. So, you could find some pretty decent headphones for a pretty cheap price. But that's kind of the last miscellaneous thing that I can think of just the category of just a one-time purchase. Now, the last thing that I will talk about for just one-time purchases is registration. So registration next to your bike and potentially wetsuit, depending on the brand that you go with, is where the most expense will from depending on the distance that you're doing. So for a sprint triathlon, your average price that you're looking for is about $85. For an Olympic, you're looking at about $135 on average, and then a half Ironman competition is about $400 base price, and then for a full-length Ironman competition, you can find them about as expensive as $800 just for base price. For a little bit more detail on pricing, I do have another video where I went over this a little bit more in depth. It was a video where I was talking about the reasons why I went to an Ironman, and so the registration is in the second half. So if you just want to watch that portion, just jump to maybe about halfway through the video or something like that. And I will go over talking about the different prices and kind of a little bit more of the price range. However, like I said, the $400 for a half, $800 for full Ironmans, that's the base price, because you can get it more expensive by adding things such as metal engraving, the t-shirt, hotel package that they have with it, and there's other amenities that you can get. So they can actually, I'm not so sure about for half Ironman, but for like the $800 full-length Ironman, it could go up to about $1,300 for registration if you do the full-on all-inclusive package, which can be useful because it does include the Ironman sponsored hotel, which at least the one I was looking at, have a shuttle that will take you to the start of the sponsored hotel will have a shuttle that will take you to the start of the race. I had a breakfast of the morning of, and there's a bunch of other benefits that you can get from it. So it could be worth it to at least do some of the things, such as the hotel. But again, you're looking at the price jumping from about $800 up to potentially $1,200 or $1,300. So it can get really, really costly just in registration alone to do a Ironman competition, or even triathlons in general. Like $85 is cheap compared to other triathlons. It's still on the expensive side when if you compare it to doing a 5, 10, or even a full marathon. So again, it is kind of on the more expensive side. And so to sum this section up, the one-time purchases that you have for swim are things such as paddles, wetsuit, swimsuit, swim cap, and goggles. For your bike, you got your bike, the bike seat, pedals, bike trainer, bike shoes and helmet, and a bike shorts, and then the registration. And then miscellaneous things that you can consider getting are tri-suits, fitness watch, and headphones. So all of this, the total price that you're looking at, if you're looking to do just a sprint triathlon and to try and do as budget friendly as possible for just a one-time thing, then you're looking at about $1,383. So while a little bit much, it's not too bad. Like, even if you have a minimum wage job, if this is something that you want to do, you can set some money aside each paycheck to put towards this, and then you can just slowly piecemeal buy things throughout the course of it. So if you want to do a sprint, be like, okay, I want to do a sprint triathlon maybe 2 years down the road. Let me save up a bit of money to get maybe a used bike like I did, and then eventually bike pedals and bike shoes, which if you're doing just a sprint triathlon, you really don't need bike pedals or bike shoes. I did my first triathlon sprint without clip-in pedals, just your standard pedals, and I just put on my running shoes that I use for that. Probably not the most ideal, but you know, it works for just something that you're trying to do. So you could even still make it even more friendly, like just buy the bike, not worry about anything else. But still probably looking at maybe about $1,000 if you go that route. But let's just say about $1,383 for the low end. Now, if you're trying to go full-on Ironman competition, let's say you get an average carbon fiber bike and all the other things I mentioned, without the amenities and just base registration, you're probably looking at spending $8,947. Now, if you do go all out and you get the amenity package and just the top of the line of most things, just still sticking with your average like carbon fiber race bike, you're probably looking at about $9,747 for just getting the equipment and registration for this Ironman competition. And that's not including travel. If you don't live somewhere near where there is an Ironman competition, and even if you do, you'll still want to get a hotel. So this $9,700 is not including hotel or airfare. So if you include those, you're probably looking at over $10,000, maybe up to $12,000. So it's already expensive, and that's just, like I said, that is just getting the equipment to do the Ironman competition. So it is something to seriously stop and consider. Do I want to do an Ironman competition? Because $10,000, $10,000 is a lot of money to spend for a potentially one-time thing. Now, if you end up doing this multiple times, you'll get good use out of your bike and other things. So some of the things will start paying off at itself for a couple competitions. But for just a one-time thing, it's something to seriously consider and think about if it is worth it to you. So it's something really to seriously stop and think about. When I first signing up for this, I did not stop and look into how much would this even cost. I was like, okay, it'll be a little bit expensive. I just looked at some videos of them saying like it can be an expensive competition. It's like, okay, cool, it can be expensive, sure, I get that. But having like a hard number in front of you can sometimes make a world of differences. And I hope this doesn't scare you off from wanting to do a competition, but I hope at the very least it gives you some consideration as to what you're looking at for doing something like this and how to best for yourself go about paying for something like this. Now again, like I said, this is just for the one-time purchases or infrequent purchases, might be a better way of putting it. Now the thing as well where it can really start adding up more that might not seem like it at the time. Okay, now before going to the next section, I think I'm mostly done with the main part of the robe. So now I think I'm gonna go for the trim. So I'm thinking either the blue, the dragon blue, or the dragon green.